Where did our industry go? Why can't wages keep pace with price inflation? The present conditions are the long-term culmination of a process which is intrinsic to a privatized currency subject to interest, an imposed system to which none of us have ever assented. Even just a year or so ago, although the present conditions were sufficiently obvious at the turn of the century and long before, you couldn't convince an economist we had anything to be concerned about. Not even rising debt. Not even our vanished industry. Not even our rapid descent in education, healthcare, or infrastructures. I've been formally warning of the consequences of this irreversible process since 1979, and less formally for 10 years before that. Today, 40 years of obstructed and actually deteriorating prosperity later, governors are holding emergency meetings and proposing to sell off state highways to meet budget deficits. If they don't fix the real problem, what will they do when all the highways are gone, or no one can afford to use any further infrastructures? The states might betray us further by offering up to even higher costs, forever. We have paid for those highways. We created them. Now, what right does any state have to sell them from us, only to pay budget deficits engendered by their own ineptitude or allegiance to a system which can only multiply such debt and costliness upon us? Now suddenly, it is fashionable for pretend economists to feign reaching for fundamental causes, and, like true shills of the central banking systems imposed upon the world, they're purposely not reaching deep enough. They complain of symptoms as if they are on your side, but their work is presented both in volume and in context to deny you understanding of the causes at hand, that by your purposed obstruction of understanding, usury can be perpetuated upon you, hopefully forever. Humanity inevitably will rise above this self-imposed scourge. We will repulse usury, because no good thing we can intend to do can survive in its presence. I can save your state's highways and your homes if you will hear me out. You reach for fundamental causes, but not deep enough. The fundamental cause of all this is inherent multiplication of debt by interest, that we have tolerated a system which from its inception was purposed to take from us by multiplication of debt, and that this process of unearned taking from us can only drive up costs to us more so than it is mathematically possible for our wages to keep pace. All the things before you are to be expected. I'll tell you why. Any purported economy subject to interest can only multiply debt in proportion to the respective circulation, because such a form of circulation obligates us to maintain a circulation merely so that we can service debt, and because to maintain a circulation, we are compelled perpetually to reborrow periodic principal and interest obligations paid out of the general circulation, as subsequent sums of debt perpetually increased so much as periodic interest on the ever-escalating sum of debt. To maintain margins of solubility, industry therefore is perpetually compelled to raise its prices to cover the rising costs of its obligations to directly or even to indirectly service the perpetually escalating sum of debt. This is the real, fundamental cause of price inflation. Why does industry leave? When industry can no longer afford to raise its prices because the indebted market cannot bear the necessary increases, it is forced to leave. And so our industry goes to countries where pretty young Chinese girls will work for 40 cents an hour, condemned to work on the streets if they ever violate the rules of the slave market and lose their license to work. Why can't our wages keep pace with the rising costs of servicing the ever-escalating sum of debt? Our wages cannot keep pace with the rising costs of servicing the ever-escalating sum of debt, because the nature of the process is to multiply debt in proportion to the related circulation. What is significant about a process which multiplies debt in proportion to the related circulation? If maintaining a vital circulation inherently multiplies the sum of debt in proportion to the circulation, then ever more of the circulation is dedicated to servicing debt, leaving ever less to sustain the industry, wages, etc., which are compelled to service the debt. That's really pretty simple, if you think about it. So what else might happen if you perpetually and irreversibly multiply debt in proportion to the circulation? Ultimately and inevitably you generate a sum of debt which the system can no longer afford to service. And that day is here. It's time to wake up, folks. It's time to do something about it, and mathematically perfected economy is what you have to do. As Larry Ward said, all the economic solution that any of the present lot of pretender candidates can promise you is a deck chair on the Titanic. While these charlatans have proposed to be responsible for near-perpetual growth, their falsely claimed growth has even banished practically all our industry. That's quite a lie to pass off as an emperor's robe. If I were president, and of course I realize I would probably never be, I believe I could restore real prosperity in as little as a day by suspending all payments against debts to banking institutions. If I were president, I'd try Congress for treason if it wasted an hour in establishing mathematically perfected economy. If I were president, that's right, I don't capitalize the title here, I would guide you through a painless, brief transition period, where, having your debts to financial institutions suspended, you would immediately have far more to spend than you can now. I would restore to you the savings you have been deprived by usury, that you can live the rest of your lives without social programs. I would refinance all your debt without interest. I would pay off your public debts with a like irredeemable promise to pay. I would reschedule your payment of debt to the rate of consumption of the related asset, that for instance a $100,000 home with a 100-year lifespan would be paid off at the overall rate of $1,000 per year, or $83.33 per month. There is no reason why the candidates before you cannot do this, but that they serve your usurers. It's getting late, folks. If you don't want to lose your country forever, it's time to assert your right to mathematically perfected economy. Mike Montagna, founder, People for Mathematically Perfected Economy, author-engineer of Mathematically Perfected Economy, 2009.